have those D20s on standby as we dive headfirst into another week of killer conversations here on Chat TPK, the home of all things geek culture. It's me, Mike, here again to welcome you to another episode in our series of discussions about the changes that the new Player's Handbook is bringing to Dungeons & Dragons, with today's focus being that of the class of Ranger. We hope that you are enjoying these episodes as we unravel what Wizards of the Coast had in store for us when the rulebooks drop later on this year. A massive thank you to all new and returning listeners to the pod. Whether you are listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or other platforms, we're so happy to have you join us each and every week. Be sure to follow and subscribe to us on your chosen platform and also on our social medias to stay in the know with all the goings on here at Chat TPK. Finally, come and join our growing community Discord to interact with both myself and a host of fellow geeks. With the admin out the way, let us jump straight into it as we welcome back two of our expert guests. Found in the wild, it's our Fey Wanderer himself, it's Ranger Rick. Good evening, Rick.
Good evening. How are you, Mike?
I'm very well. That our wild Rick has appeared. It's going to be great to have you this evening
Raised
to
by
pick
wolves,
your brain.
There's hair on my back.
Mine too, and I think that's because I've got a bit of Turkish ancestry in me. Anywho, it's great to have you. We are going to be delving into Rangers this evening, and hopefully you can give us your insight as we see what the changes are for this class. But you're not alone in this discussion. We are also joined by somebody who I would say is everyone's favoured enemy. It's Martyn. Martyn,
hi everyone.
Back.
I feel like there should have been a dun dun dun.
I can put one in post edit. Don't worry, that's going to be there.
Now. Apologies for
Fantastic.
anyone who gets deafened by the dun dun dun.
I can
but hi,
look at you and crack my knuckles as you're my favourite enemy.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely heard that. That was picked up on your mic, and I hope you heard it at home as well. Now, it's
if you did, we apologise because some people don't like that.
Yeah.
Some people don't.
Turned off the podcast.
But we're going to be carrying on with our series of looking at different classes. How long we're going to go on with the series, who knows? It's up to you at home, whether you're enjoying and getting lots of tasty information and insight from our discussions. But we will be looking at Ranger, as we've said. Having looked at the internet so far, based upon what people are saying, this class is probably one that has received a lot of intrigue and a lot of interest / hate. I don't know. Is that too strong a word?
Isn't it? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No.
So everyone likes to be mean to the Ranger, don't they? The poor thing.
It's nothing new there. Yeah.
It's been the butt of the joke for 10 years, and they're doing their best. Poor things. They're just a guy with a bow.
I think they went some way to fixing some of the problems with some of the classes with Tasha's, and this kind of continues that. But I think from my perspective and the general sentiment that I'm getting online and other people that I've spoke to is that they've still not gone the whole way and in some ways made it worse.
Okay, so it's one of the classes that is what we would say is a half caster. So they predominantly would use martial weapons such as a longbow, or any sort of range weapon such as that, but then they can utilize some sort of spells. It's probably one of the easier classes for newbies to kind of dip their toe into spellcasting, not with the level of complexity that something like Sorcerer and Wizard would bring. But have they done enough to bridge that gap for new players? Is there still going to be a class that someone who hasn't played D&D before is going to want to be able to choose and enjoy using? Or
Yeah, I think so. I think Ranger's pretty simple, and it stays pretty simple. And I know a lot of people done a big moan about Hunter's Mark, which we'll get into later, but if you know the spell that your character's based around and you can cast it for free, cool.
What I've found is, and I don't think any of the changes that we see here today will impact this in any way at all. Most people, when they come to play Ranger, when it's maybe like their first character, are not playing it because what they've read about the character. It's because this fits my image for the character I want to play, rather than I want to play this class
fantasy
that I've read.
Totally agree. Yeah, if you wanted to play the most powerful class, you'd have been playing Wizard since first edition. So
as we learnt last week, just how OP, how balanced the wizards are.
Or maybe Cleric.
Clerics potentially campaign setting would have an impact on that. I mean, I know how powerful your cleric is in our Curse of Strahd campaign, Martyn. So yeah. Anywho, thinking about Ranger and going forward with it, what is a Ranger? Like, mechanically speaking, why would someone pick a Ranger? What are they good at? What role does it play in the party?
So, Rangers are your explorers. They're the people who've been places and seen things. So they're often the ones who are going to be able to follow animal tracks or be able to integrate, just the right tavern where you're going to be able to lay low, that kind of thing. They're often the mesh that holds a party together without really knowing it, because they can do all the things that no one else really has that special ability to do. Well, they do share some of the things with other classes like stealth, high dexterity and stuff like that. They're the one of the few classes that you would generally expect are likely to find have proficiency in things like potentially animal handling or survival or nature, things like that, where there are some crossovers with other classes. This is the one that, if you don't have a druid, can kind of fill a druid role. If you don't have a rogue, they can kind of fill a rogue role. If you don't have a fighter, they can kind of fill that role. So that, without nicking it from the bard, in many ways they're a jack of all trades, because as you've already said, they're half spellcasters. They get spells, they can do ranged attacks, they can do melee attacks, they do traversal and exploration really well. That's my view on Rangers anyway.
I think initially they were made to be halfway between a fighter and a druid, but they are a little more than that because they go into rogue and stuff. Like, I think if you think of the grizzled bounty hunter that your guys know, he's likely to be a ranger, and he's going to go, oh, I know a guy. I know just the place. I know the deer tracks through the woods that can get us there quicker. They're sort of the guy you can rely on, a ranger.
So, like, when traversing through and exploring through the wilderness, they're probably the best class to get you somewhere or to help find something. RP wise, that's really quite useful, especially at lower levels when you haven't got a host full of spells that can potentially do some of these things. So, yeah, I think later on we're going to discuss how Rangers are portrayed in the media. So make sure you stay tuned for that later on in this episode. But we're essentially going to break down all the changes that this class has received coming into the new 2024 Player's Handbook. There are some omissions from the class. There are some additions that they've taken from either Unearthed Arcana or the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which is, I think, as we've discussed many times, something they keep picking from and saying it's brand new when actually it's not. And then we can look at the 4 classes, because every class, 4 subclasses, as every class is being given 4 subclasses for the new handbook, and just basically drilling down what's the difference between the 4, why you'd use them, etc. As we have in our previous 2 class episodes. So, Ranger as a class at the moment, how is it going to be different? Well, level 1 is quite a bit of a change here, I would say. Martyn, what's the difference between a 2014 Ranger and a 2024 Ranger going into the new Player's Handbook? What's changing?
So we've got a few things hitting us at level 1 in the new Ranger. So the first thing is Favoured Enemy, which in many ways very much really only shares the name and the feeling with the old Favoured Enemy. So it's no longer about trying to remember information about animals or tracking a specific opponent or anything like that. Now it allows you to cast Hunter's Mark twice per long rest without expending a spell
On
slot.
any enemy or just that
and
enemy?
means that you always... No, it just gives you the ability to cast Hunter's Mark twice per long rest without casting a spell slot, basically allowing you to go, you now are my favoured enemy.
Okay.
Like, you've just cast Hunter's Mark on it. Like, that is really the extent of it. It allows you to kind of keep pace on damage in those early levels. If you're using light weapons or a short bow. I mean, longbow's not too much of an issue, but just maybe like kind of keep up a little bit in terms of damage and stuff like that. That's kind of it for favored enemy. They've just used the name for a completely different feature.
Because the feature before was literally just giving you an advantage on things like tracking it, wasn't it?
Yeah, you'd be like, I specifically don't like orcs, and it means that you've got proficiency in tracking them and things like that.
It did get replaced later in Tasha's with favored foe, which was essentially this, but you can add a d4 to hit rolls, and it requires your concentration. So this is better than favored foe, and better and worse than favored enemy. I think I like favored enemy because it adds to the flavor of your character.
It added non-combat utility.
Yeah.
Like, really,
but
all this is going is
combat.
You can use Hunter's Mark now, which sure is nice. And first level spell slots are nice when you're level 1, and not having to use them is even better, especially on. Which is a fab spell.
It's a cool mechanic of the actual Ranger, isn't it? The Hunter's Mark, which it utilizes again and actually improves upon at later levels, which again we'll come to very shortly.
Favored enemy as well in 2014 was widely loathed by the D&D community, so it's nice to see it changed. I suppose
something needed changing. Yeah, fair play. So they've listened to the fans again, which is always a good thing. And that's level 1.
So that's not the only thing at level 1. But wait, there is more. So they've done away with Natural Explorer. So Natural Explorer was a previous feature at level 1, which basically allowed you to be like, I'm particularly good at
forests.
I think they called it favored terrain as well at some point. So it's like, I'm good in forests, I'm good in caves, things like that. That's gone now.
Yeah.
We'll see why when we get to level 2. They've also, as with many of the other classes that use weapons, gained weapon mastery at level 1.
Do you know how many they get?
So you've got some really cool things. They would get 2, and they can swap them out during a long rest.
Nice.
Yeah, I know on Ranger spellcasting as well, they can switch out 1 prepared spell per day, which is quite good.
Rather than level up, which is really good.
They used to just learn them, and that was that, and then you can swap them out and level up. 1 per day, cool. Makes you feel like a prepared guy, doesn't it?
That's it, and that's the other thing, spellcasting at level 1, which is nice.
Which normally would have been level 2, wouldn't it?
Normally would have been at level 2. Spellcasting's also now at level 1, and like you've just said there, Rick, they've got the ability to change out 1 spell per long rest, which is useful, because waiting until you level up can be absolutely painful when you sat there looking at that 1 spell that you've never used and has never been useful, and you know you've got something else available that you'd really like to use. So yeah, that's absolutely fab. They've also made it so that your ability to use a druidic focus as your spellcasting focus is now just a base core of the class, rather than just something that you could tag on again from Tasha's.
So that could be an example of a druidic focus. Could that be something like a necklace or something?
Sprig of mistletoe.
Yeah,
I think they do define a couple of things, but with most focuses, it's whatever your imagination wants it to be. If you wanted it to be something, it's just a twig from the tree that you grew up in or whatever. Do you know? Like, it doesn't really matter.
Fair play.
But it kind of does, but it also doesn't. For flavor-wise, it can be whatever you want it to be, really.
Nice. So favourite of me and weapon mastery at level 1, and as you say, we lose Natural Explorer. Going on to level 2, Natural Explorer was gone. Deft Explorer is essentially taking its place. Rick, what is Deft Explorer? How is it slightly different to that of Natural Explorer from the old PHB?
So Natural Explorer used to give you, like Martyn said, advantage or certain benefits in certain terrain. Deft Explorer gives you expertise in 1 skill and 2 languages of your choice. So better, because it's not dependent on where you are. You're always going to have use for a skill you have expertise in. And it's been split now into... So it was also Canny. Canny gave you expertise in a skill and an additional bit of movement speed, but that comes later now.
Yeah.
It's been split into Roving and Tireless, which are now level 6 and level 10 features that come later. We'll talk about those later. So you get expertise in 2 languages at level 2.
I think having
nice.
2 new languages actually fits quite nicely with the RP of a Ranger, because they're essentially someone that has been all over the place, they're likely to know multiple languages, potentially trading, exploring, hunting different types of creatures. So I think that RP wise fits quite nicely.
Yeah, the expertise is fantastic too, because it stops you being like, I'm the same amount of wise as the cleric in the party, so they know all of the wisdom skills exactly, almost as well as I do. That expertise allows you just to set yourself apart on that character vision that you've got. If you want them to be particularly good at that thing, you now can.
I like that it comes in at level 2 as well instead of level 1, because your character's already been put in the world if you play from level 1. And so you can go, right, what's our main enemy? What are we fighting? Cool. I know those languages. It fits me into the campaign. It stops you essentially having to have, again, we'll see this as a theme through most of the classes, having to have DM buy-in to be able to go, I want to be able to speak the languages that whatever monster we're going to be facing most speaks. And them going, well, I'm not telling you what that is because that's a surprise for the campaign. You can maybe work it out and as a player go, I know these languages now. And if you guess wrong, you guess wrong.
Yeah. It helps you flesh out your character quite early on, doesn't it? Within those first few levels.
Yeah, it prevents that regret of picking snowy terrain as your favorite terrain and your entire campaign being in like a subtropical jungle,
a desert or something,
or something like that.
Yeah.
If only the sand was colder, I'd be so much better here.
Well, technically, Antarctica is a desert.
That's true, but that doesn't help if your favorite terrain is snow and you're in a desert.
Yeah.
Definitely not. And also level 2, we get our fighting styles, which is a new type of feat now. The different fighting style that you can pick up. Normally, the fighting styles that were available to the ranger were things like 2-weapon fighting being one, I believe, and also
archery.
And that was it, wasn't it? Was dueling one as well?
Wasn't many. Yes, dueling was one.
I know they couldn't get protection, they couldn't get interception, they couldn't get defense. You know what? I've got the ranger up right here.
Archery, defense, dueling, 2-weapon fighting.
Oh, they can get defense. Okay.
Yeah, while wearing armor, you gain a +1. Yeah, yeah. I think was there a protection?
There was
protection one,
like a protector
using the shield, and they've given them that as well now.
Yeah, that'll be the one. Nice, and which I think is fair. Allows you to play your class character, the character you want to play, rather than be limited by the class. This, to me, it's not changed.
Yeah,
it's pretty much the same thing.
They've just opened it up. All I would say is, why would you want, like, thinking about it, maybe you could find an RP reason for it, but a ranger with protection as their fighting style doesn't really lend itself well to what the ranger can do.
Why?
So, why?
I challenge you to explain yourself.
Okay. Well,
maybe he carries one round on his back to use for like snow surfing, snow sledding. and just was like, oh, seeing as I've got this thing here,
because I would typically think of a ranger who is either someone who's doing 2-weapon fighting with their 2 light weapons, or someone who predominantly fights at range. But then, as you say, they're a mixture of a few different types of classes. So I guess they can draw upon that fighting element, and they could use their shield. But that's just not what I think of when I think of ranger.
Yeah, I'd have to agree from my own perception of it. But like we've seen in so many of the other changes, I think this has purely been done to stop any of that restriction. Like you wanted to play a ranger, and you are that 1 in 100 people who wants to play a ranger with a shield.
All right.
Now you can and make full use of it.
We're skipping ahead, but the guys in the Night's Watch in Game of Thrones, they're rangers. They have swords and shields.
They are rangers by their own names, but I wouldn't constitute most of them as rangers. The ones that went out beyond the wall, sure. The ones that guarded the wall, no.
You think they're just fighters? Just scrubs?
I think they're just fighters. Yeah.
Well, that's something we can discuss.
Some of them are level 0 commoners.
We'll revisit this later.
we definitely, that you've actually mentioned a really good point. So that is a little breadcrumb to tease you for our later discussion. So that's level 2. Level 3, as with all the classes, is where we get subclass. They have unified that across all. And the 4 they have chosen, which we will go into a bit more detail after we have discussed the main features of the Ranger. I personally love Gloomstalker. It's one of the really strong ones, I think. We've also got Fey
Wanderer.
Fey Wanderer, Beastmaster, and also Hunter. And I think out of those 4, notoriously, the Beastmaster was probably...
Beastmaster was trash.
Yeah.
2014 Beastmaster was an absolute garbage fire.
I was going to say it's one of the most underused. I don't think it was underused, because I think a lot of people wanted to use it because they wanted that sort of, if you just look at something like Vex from Critical Role, they like aspired to have like a companion with them, but it just wasn't very good. So veteran players would steer clear from it, but newbies would probably think, oh yeah, that's great, but actually,
they do it for the first time and then go, I am never doing that again.
Great class fantasy man who fights with bear. Cool. Unfortunately, execution wasn't great, so hopefully it's a bit better now? Question mark.
Yeah.
Tash has improved it quite a lot, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. We'll talk about it more when we get to it, but they've basically just made Tasha's more.
They've also taken away at level 3 primeval awareness, so that's not going to be something that's available to the Ranger going forward.
What a shame.
But really, that wasn't great. You expend an action and a spell slot to be able to focus on the region around you, and you could then try and see if there's an aberration. Oh, does it have to be in your favourite terrain? No, apologies.
The range increases if it was in your favourite terrain.
Oh, yes. Yeah. But that essentially would let you see if there were aberrations, celestials, dragons, etc. Doesn't reveal the creature's location or number.
Within 1 mile of you is a huge amount of area.
Massive distance, yeah. In a dungeon, it's basically the whole dungeon.
Yeah, so you've expended your resources for someone to go, yes.
Yes.
It's fine traps.
Yeah. The way that this always made sense, the way that this always just clicked for me, is you're out in the wild. Yeah. You know that everything around you is going to be a beast. Because the only thing around you are going to be humanoids and animals.
Yeah.
Right? So if you fire off on that and you pick up any one of those things which is out of the norm, something's wrong.
Yeah.
That's the closest I can get to finding use for
There's something to watch out for. Potential spoilers from a DM.
If you're going out there, generally it's because you know something's wrong. Because otherwise you'd be drinking with your party in the tavern, wouldn't you?
True. But it could also be that you're on the way, but you don't know exactly where they are, so you fire that
Perfect.
up.
They're within 1 mile. Which direction? No idea.
Yeah,
How many of them are you?
We're getting close. We're getting close now, but we could be walking away tomorrow.
Yeah. If it gave you something like number, that could be useful, potentially. Like if you say dragon and there's 10 dragons.
Distance, or like a general direction, like a compass point direction. Because number, I think, would be a bit much for that level, but literally just because the range is a mile, if you just went there that way, you're not pinpointing it. You just know they are in. They could be literally 100 feet away or the mile away.
Yeah, you know to be cautious going that direction.
It's funny that it gets worse if you're in your favourite terrain, because it goes out to 6 miles and you still don't know where they are or which direction they're in.
Yeah. How bizarre.
Possibly one of the reasons why they binned it. It is gone.
Good. Right, good riddance to primeval awareness. The Ranger does get an ASI at level 4, like most classes does, and also extra attack at level 5, but level 6 is the next class feature, which is now roving. This is an interesting one. It gains not only 10 feet of speed at climbing, but also swimming. So normally your swim speed and your climbing speed is half of that of your regular speed, isn't it?
Yeah, sort of.
So normally you don't have a swimming or climbing speed. Okay. So if you're ever swimming or climbing, it's considered difficult terrain, which means your speed is halved.
But 40-foot speed as a base level and a climb speed and a swim speed. Swim speed?
Spanging.
Very good, yeah. Worth going up to 6 levels of Ranger as someone who wants to be another combat-based class, so you can run up the walls and be a bad man. Especially climb speed, especially good for a ranged build.
So Let me
Yeah.
just get this straight. If say your walking speed was 40,
Mhm.
your climb and swim would still just be 10. It doesn't matter really what the walking speed is.
I think you gain a climb speed and a swim speed equal to your walking speed.
Because if that's the case, then that's pretty epic. Going 40 foot up a wall.
Yeah, so it's equal to your walking speed, but your walking speed has just increased by 10. So it's put that up to 40, ergo your climb and your swim is also 40. Yeah.
That's really quite powerful then. Because you think about
It's great.
most rooms are not going to be more than 20, 30 foot tall. So you could pretty much climb to the top of a room and get up balconies and really use the height. If the map you're on has any sort of verticality, you could use that to your advantage massively.
Yeah, I think it fits the Ranger, and it's not really a massive difference. It's an additional 5 feet compared to what you used to get in the Ranger anyway.
Yeah.
As part of the optionals in there, I think, like Rick was saying before, I think this formed part of Deft Explorer that they've just split out into different bits or something like that. So if you were taking that optional anyway, you're getting 5 feet more than what you were getting anyway.
Yeah. So they're kind of cherry picking.
Pretty balanced, fits the Ranger. Yeah. It fits that I've been around, I can do things kind of person.
And this is how Legolas is able, again, going on to the media, is able to slide down an Oliphant so quickly or climb up one.
Yeah, he's got an additional surfing on an Uruk-hai shield speed as well.
Anyway, moving on to after roving, we get to level 8, which would have been Landstride, which I think has kind of been covered here because Landstride was that extra speed, wasn't it?
No, Landstride was moving through difficult terrain past no extra movement. You can pass through non-magical plants without being slowed by them or taking damage from them if they have thorns. And then you have advantage against saving throws against plants that are magically created or manipulated to impede movement, such as those created by the Entangle spell, which is niche.
So yeah, Entangle. You can go through your own spell, essentially, because Entangle is one of the Ranger's spells, isn't it? But yeah, very niche. Normally, if something's entangled, you're wanting to slow them down so you keep that distance. Is it something you're going to want to run up and hit? And
I'm not a fan of this one.
No?
I think Landstride was nice. As it was, that ability to not be impeded by difficult terrain, while it was relatively niche, it didn't come up a lot. When it did come up a lot, it felt good. And with it being replaced by nothing, really, at this level, and the excuse being, oh, we're giving you another expertise next level, I don't feel like the trade-off's worth it.
You can avoid now a lot of difficult terrain though by climbing up above it or swimming past.
Unless you're if you've got those options, right? Because like we were looking at before, you still had that in roving anyway. You still got your climb speed, you still got your swim speed. It was just 5 feet less. So I think that I'd miss Landstride. I think it was a good feature.
Okay. Yeah, as you've mentioned, expertise is given to us at level 9, giving you 2 additional skills. This is where I feel like it kind of coincides with the rogue, because the rogue's always in my mind been someone that gets some decent expertise, and it's kind of like lending itself to that.
You've got 1 less expertise than the rogue now, which is pretty good for someone who gets all the fighting styles and spells, because rogues miss out on those.
Yeah. So yeah, that's by level 9 they will have 4 expertise. Am I right in saying? 3 expertise.
3. And 3 bards and rogues will have 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is really quite useful, depending on how you want to set your build up. And moving on to 10. 10 gives us a feature called Tireless, with hide in plain sight being removed. Martyn, what does Tireless bring to the Ranger?
The ability to give yourself some temp HP.
Make you a bit tankier. Nice.
Yeah. So it's something that we saw a very similar version of in Tasha's, that basically your proficiency your proficiency bonus determined how many times you could use this. Now it's your wisdom modifier. That's it, really.
It's not that many temporary HP, is it, really?
It's not that many temp HP. It does allow you to reduce your level of exhaustion by 1 if you take a short rest instead of having to wait for a long rest like it does with some people. So that's pretty good. But it's basically the tire list that we saw for the most part in Tasha's,
Yep.
apart from them using wisdom instead of proficiency bonus to determine the number of uses.
I would say that's a bit of a strange
Strange
stat
way
to
to do
tie to tireless. You'd think you'd tie it to con or the proficiency bonus.
Yeah, it's purely because obviously wisdom is their
spellcasting stat.
Depending on how you play it, it's their technically their primary stat. If you're playing dex based or strength based or anything like that, that could go differently if you're not playing a spellcasting ranger.
Yep.
But if you were min maxing, wisdom should be high on your ranger.
Wisdom and dex probably being two of the highest.
Dex con. Probably, and maybe not necessarily in that order. I'd probably go Dex WizCon personally.
Nice.
Because you got to hit them still for Hunter's Mark to be effective and stuff like that. So,
hide and play sight, which was essentially a way within which the ranger could, as it kind of says, hide. Within 1 minute, you could create a camouflage for yourself. This would require something like mud or plants or other things to help camouflage you. And once camouflaged in this way, you could hide behind a tree or hide behind a wall, and it would give you an extra 10 to dex stealth checks, which is a bit like Pass Without Trace, essentially, isn't it? Which is a plus 10.
Yeah, much less mobile, of course. You generally, I think it's something like if you use your action or move or something, you've got to re-camouflage yourself, so like another minute. Have you seen Hunger Games?
Boy.
Yeah,
your cake boy, Peter Malark, paints himself to look like a stone or whatever. Like that's the kind of thing you're looking there.
So very, very useful for one action, and then that's it. Very situational.
But again, it's the kind of thing that you absolutely could find a use for it every now and then.
But for a level 10 class feature,
I don't think it'll be missed massively, especially when you, like Rick was saying, you've got not got Pass Without a Trace and stuff like that as well,
which can affect more than one person.
And you can move.
Yeah.
And you're potentially already going to have a pretty high dex by level 10, so your stealth rolls should be okay. You might even have expertise now in your stealth rolls, so you should find a lot more utility in that single spell than this.
I kind of feel like with Landstride going at 8, they probably could have kept this and shoved it in 8, and it still would have given some, again, flavour to the ranger. But
it would have been good to... Obviously, I'm not a rules designer, or everyone would be wildly overpowered.
You should be, though. You should be.
But they could have stuck that at 8 and gone, you now get essentially what the Skulker feat is now. If you are hidden, you miss with an attack, you stay hidden. Or if you're only partially obscured, you can take the hide action instead of having to be fully obscured. It's not that big of a buff, because you don't get the rogues cutting actions. You can't do it as a bonus action.
I think you'll see some of that, because you do definitely have some of that in the subclass specific stuff to a kind of extent. So like Gloomstalkers particularly, if it's dark, I'm invisible kind of thing.
Which hide doesn't help anymore.
It could be,
because hiding now gives you the invisible condition. So if you're invisible anyway...
And if you're already invisible...
Don't do anything.
Yeah. Cancels each other out. Moving on to level 13, the next jump up in the class features for Ranger is Relentless Hunter. Damage no longer threatens to break your concentration. Now, because... on Hunter's Mark, should I say. Not concentration in all spells, just Hunter's Mark, which is nice because even when I've played as a Ranger, you get hit... and then you've just wasted that spell slot on the Hunter's Mark. And you kind of rely upon that to, again, give you that damage, enough, especially at lower levels.
Hunter's Mark is free to cast as well. You may as well cast it. You don't lose anything.
That's the thing for me. I don't think that this Relentless Hunter feature has any value.
Because of that
no
spell slot.
It sounds great. It sounds great because you're like, you can maintain concentration when you take damage. That sounds great because it's a very annoying thing to happen at the wrong time. But when you look at the amount of times where it's going, you can cast this for free now without expending a spell slot, and it only takes a bonus action anyway. there's just not a lot of value in it for me.
Also,
It's not that much of an inconvenience, is it?
Depending on the type of ranger you're playing, you might be 120 feet away with a longbow. Or, I mean, if you're playing a sword and board ranger and using protection, yeah, cool. But if you're a spellcaster one,
probably won't.
You'll be quite far away, so you'll rarely get damaged. And if you do, I mean, it's a bonus action to put it back up anyway. It's okay.
Is it level 13 okay?
No, not really.
No.
But other classes are getting decent stuff at level 13, like 7th level spell slots.
And this does not compare to that at all. That's depressing. I can see why, actually. This has been one of the classes that has received the hate, because by this point in the class, I'm already wondering. I mean, you've got subclass stuff to think about as well, but this is not really that powerful.
The subclass features definitely make up for it. And we've also got to consider that along the way here, we're talking about all of this stuff. The Rangers, while slower, are still picking up more spell slots and higher level spells that they can do. So by this point, by level, what are we on, 13, they're going to have 1 4th level spell and some first, third, and second under there. So they would pick up their first 4th level spell at this level as well.
Okay.
Which
is good for a half cast.
I'd like to say it offsets it a little bit.
It doesn't.
But if you were really bothered about your spells, you probably wouldn't be paying a ranger, because you'll use a few, but not loads.
A lot of other classes, though, don't get anything at level 14. I'm just quickly browsing through.
Yeah.
So 14's the next level, isn't it?
Yeah. So the Relentless Hunter is 13. Level 14 did have Vanish, which has been taken away, but it's been replaced with Nature's Veil, which allows, as a bonus action, for the player to become invisible until the end of the next turn. I think this was also in Tasha's Cauldron, if I'm not mistaken. It says it's now at level 14. What level was Nature's Veil previous to this in Tasha's?
Pretty sure it was the same, but just like something else that we were talking about a minute ago, it uses a wisdom modifier
instead of hide in plain sight.
Was it? But it's again wisdom modifier for times you can use it instead of proficiency bonus like it used to be.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, you don't need hide in plain sight anymore, do you? Because now they do the same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
4 levels later.
Womp womp.
Yeah. And if you're playing as a Gloomstalker, you probably have other ways of doing this anyway, so that would be kind of moot.
Depending on your setting. Yeah. You're gonna pick up invisibility as a Gloomstalker by this point.
Yeah. So that's Nature's Veil at level 14. Level 17 is Precise Hunter, which allows you, on any creature you've marked with the Hunter's Mark, advantage, which is pretty awesome. Means that you're going to hit a lot more often. If you're multiclassing with a rogue, potentially could be useful for getting those sneak attacks. But then, if you're level 17 in a ranger, 3 levels of a rogue, not going to give you a lot of sneak attack dice, are they?
That's true. You know how else you can get advantage on attacks against someone? 2 levels of barbarian.
Reckless attack.
Or being invisible.
Which you already are as a bonus action.
Yeah. So actually, level 17 sucks, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in my head, I've already counted at least 5 levels where they've done nothing.
That's a good point, actually. Nature's Veil turns you invisible as a bonus action, which interferes with Hunter's Mark a little bit, because I assume you would have to concentrate on that.
Yeah, Hunter's Mark is concentration, yeah.
But it says you can turn invisible, not you can cast invisibility, so...
Yeah, so it lasts until the end of your next turn.
Which is fine, because it means you can make
you
4
basically Hunter's Mark the turn before. Yeah, Hunter's Mark the turn before, get your whatever off, attacks, movement, whatever you want to do, position yourself so that it's easier to get it off. Hunter's Mark at the start of your next one, pew, pew, pew. But you would then you'd then be visible, and you'd have to use your bonus action next turn to become it. So there's a little bit of, I suppose, the action economy and what is and isn't as useful. So this potentially, if you don't want to waste every other bonus action becoming invisible, waste is a strong word because invisibility is quite useful. This is an alternate option, but it just doesn't feel worth it. I think, like, all of this is very lackluster, in my opinion.
I'm getting
when we think about the other things that we've looked at, this is just underwhelming.
It reminds me when we did our look at Barbarian. Barbarian post level 8, 9 was really quite light, and I'm getting those sorts of vibes from this. Like, why would you take this class up to this point? You'd probably have multi-class into something else. And
it did. Sticking up for Barbarian, it did used to be the case, 2014 wise, that Barbarian got brutal critical 6,000 times after level 8. But now they get some quite good stuff. They get their brutal strikes where they can boss people around. And I'll grant you that it's similar in theme, that it does all go, you can use your brutal strike to do this now, and you can use your brutal strike to do this now, which this is doing with Hunter's Mark. But brutal strike feels better because you do extra damage and you smash people around. You don't cause a lot of redundancy in your own class with your bonus actions and your invisibility. Seems strange.
And potentially losing it through, well, actually, you can't lose it through concentration at this point in the class.
Unless you need to cast another spell.
I'm hoping that they balance it by giving you one of the subclass feature. Hopefully they'll get a subclass feature here to balance it out, so that you are getting more than just this at such a high level.
So that's Precise Hunter. Level 18, Feral Senses. You now have Blind Sight, which in my opinion, bar True Sight, is one of the more useful ways of seeing things. Although Tremor Sense is pretty good as well, to be fair. And it allows you to
see.
Oh, yeah. So obviously, yes. So enemies that are invisible, you can see. Does it also allow you to see into the ethereal plane as well?
No, it doesn't.
No?
No. So you don't get disadvantage on attacking things that are invisible. You're aware of the location.
Well, I'm just thinking that up to 30 feet, you're probably going to be further away than that in most situations, or at least you'd want to be if you're a range fighter.
I think that's maybe why they've given it Blind Sight instead, rather than just you can see, you know where invisible things are. I think it makes more sense, especially with changes to invisibility.
Yeah, because 2014 it was similar, this, wasn't it? Except it says when you attack a creature you can't see, your inability to see it doesn't impose advantage. You're aware of the location of any invisible creature within 30 feet of you, provided it's not hidden from you and you're not blind or deaf. So Blind Sight just replaces all of that with Blind Sight, which is fine.
Yeah.
They've just made it easier to understand, really, because it was slightly convoluted what you were just reading there, Rick.
Yeah.
Whereas this is you've got Blind Sight now; you can see things.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're going to change the wording on invisibility though to
I hope so.
Not be as lawyerable, because
it's not as useful as you think it would be.
Well,
or as you want it to be.
The invisible condition's fine, except it should have the words in the second bullet point, while the creature can't see you, attack rolls against you have disadvantage and the creature's attack rolls have advantage. But it doesn't say that. It just says attack rolls against the creature have disadvantage and the creature's attack rolls have advantage, which means even if someone can see you, knows exactly where you are outlined in magical glittering dust or whatever, you still get the disadvantage and advantage.
Yeah. I'm very glad you mentioned that, Rick. I have spoken out many times during many of my games, yet I refuse to change how invisibility works. That it's just stupid. Like, your person with Blind Sight, I know exactly where you are. We're making eye contact. Do you know what I mean? But you've still got disadvantage on attacks against it.
Do you think most DMs would just waive that, or I personally have always stuck to it as it's written?
I don't know. It very much varies depending on the person.
Yeah.
Right. I also stick with it. I often try and find a reason to justify it to myself why I am sticking with it, other than my own pedantry.
Yeah.
But
fair.
Yeah. I do hope they change it. Yeah.
One thing I was thinking about this is utilising in that Blind Sight. If you're a Gloomstalker, you can cast Darkness. Would this be a way in which you could see through your own darkness? Because unlike something like a Warlock who has invocations like Devil Sight, up until this point you wouldn't be able to see into your own darkness, would you? If you're a ranger,
correct.
So that's a good little combo potentially, albeit very late level.
Warlock can do that combo at level 3.
Yeah.
3? Yeah.
So yeah. Not ideal. And after level 18, we get onto the level 19 epic boon, which again all classes get. The recommended boon that they say would be good for a ranger is the boon of dimensional travel. It increases one ability score up to a maximum of 30, which is quite typical of a boon. And immediately after you take the attack or magic action, you can teleport up to 30 feet. Ipso facto, Misty Step, essentially.
Very fun. If you're a Fey Wanderer, absolutely take this and just be pathing all over the place, pretending to be Nightcrawler. If I would probably, if I was playing a ranged build, not bother with this and take the one they recommended for the Barbarian, where you add your level to your crits and make awful messes of people.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this one has got a bit of use outside of combat as well, because obviously when you are using magic outside of combat, it's still using your action and stuff like that. So, say for example, you needed to be somewhere very quickly or get over a 60-foot wide chasm or something like that, you could use your magic action to cast a spell to do a thing, and then immediately after that teleport, that could be something like teleport.
Like a
If that
double
makes
jump.
sense, but not specific.
Like a blink.
Like a double jump kind of thing. Yeah.
Like the Hunter's double jump in Destiny, if you've played that. Have you seen? No?
Sorry.
Okay.
Like Crash Bandicoot's double jump.
Yeah.
Yep, played that one. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, as I think we looked at the Wizards epic boon that they were recommended, and I think we could always make an argument that there's another that would also be pretty good for it. So yeah, again, they're just recommended. They're not necessarily the only one for this class. And level 20 keeps Foe Slayer. Foe Slayer was something that was, I believe, already part of the Ranger. How has this changed, if at all, Rick?
It's crap now.
Why? But this class has been so good up until this point.
It changes the damage on Hunter's Mark to 1d10 instead of 1d6.
Whoop-de-doo, level 20, we get an extra average 2 points of damage per arrow or per hit.
I mean, in fairness, it's not much worse than what it was in 2014.
Yeah.
Where you used to be able to, once per turn, add your wisdom modifier to an attack roll or damage roll against one of your favoured enemies.
Yeah, it was the once per turn thing that I think really limited it. The favoured enemies thing didn't help either. But if you're talking, let's say, level 20 on average, you're probably going to have a 20 wisdom, really, if you're playing a ranger at this point, 18, 20, unless you've got something crazy that's got you above that. So you're going to be adding 4 or 5 extra damage once per turn when you're making multiple attacks per turn, and only if you're attacking specific people, like you said. Now it's only an average of 2 extra damage, but it's an extra 2 damage per hit on someone that's Hunter's Marked.
That's true. Technically, that's what the Barbarian. That's better than the increases to the Barbarian's rage they get every 7 levels. So they don't like adding consistently doable damage, wizards, it seems, unless you are in fact a wizard.
Yep, we get it. Wizards are the best. It does confuse me why something like rage and this is just so minimal. Like level 20, a Tarask is not going to be shaking at this increase.
I mean, the 5e Tarask probably would.
Yeah.
You could get a few attacks out of a ranger at 20th level, right? You could do your 2 attacks, take your 2 scimitars, do an extra 1, do 3d10 damage. 2 weapon fighting might work slightly differently, but you might then be able to do another attack as a bonus action.
Yeah.
And again, this will stack with other things. So, like we'll look at this soon, but the way that Gloomstalker's Dread Ambush has changed, so that will it's going to be more. It's just going to be more dice. So by this point at level 20, when you're hitting things 3 times instead of rolling 6 dice, you're probably going to end up rolling something closer to like 9 or 12.
Feels quite good to roll a fistful of dice. If you've ever played a paladin and you've done a crit smite, watch this.
Most people don't have enough dice for it. They have to borrow.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
I just roll the same one 15 times.
Yeah, and do the math on that, yeah. We'll be right back just after this short break. Ranger's main class features summed up. This is where we get to go into the subclasses that it has. As we've previously said, Beastmaster, Fey Wanderer, Gloomstalker, and Hunter are the 4 chosen. There are obviously others that have been used in other books, and again, we'll stress the point, it is still available to go backwards and use previous subclasses. It's all interchangeable and backwards compatible, but these are the 4 with which they have tried to tweak and improve. I use the word improve with air quotes, because some have, some haven't. And we'll start off with probably the one that needed the most improving out of them all. Either of you, feel free to jump in on this one, but Beastmaster, how's that improving?
So they've taken a leaf out of the book of Tasha's, and I see a lot of the Drake Warden changes in this as well. So your animal companion will grow with you. So their AC will improve, amongst other things. They get additional strength as you level up, rather than them just being this static creature.
Because that never happened
the
before,
entire
and I
game.
just felt like if you had an animal at the beginning of your adventure, you're getting way better, and they're kind of just staying the same. So that's really, really nice that your bear or your wolf or whatever you have with you is getting beefier, and potentially a really key NPC, because you're not just playing one person now, you're playing 2 people. Someone that's really, really important to your character and your whole journey could be so squishy at later levels, but now isn't as much.
That doesn't happen. They've also changed the way that the action economy works a little bit when you're using that companion. So it used to be that you used your action to give them instructions or make them do things. It's now a bonus action,
that's
which
nasty.
is good.
That was nasty before.
Yeah,
It's like,
it
massive
was like
trade-off.
waste your
Like I
turns.
do something or they do, and it's just
So that's good. And also, as you get a bit further on, your spells will affect your animal companion as well. So if you were to like heal yourself, your companion would get healed. They can take advantage of your hunter's mark, which is fab, because that was only usually just you, the ranger. No one else could benefit from that hunter's mark, but now your animal companion can as well. And they can take dodge as a bonus action. So honestly, all really good changes.
Needed changes.
Do I think it's fantastic still? No, but it's definitely better than it was.
For those first-time players who, like we said earlier, are probably drawn to this, they're going to have a nicer time, a nicer first experience of D&D potentially, or of the Ranger. So that's nice, but still not the best subclass of choice.
I think it fits the niche really well. Fits
the fantasy that person
the character
would have.
fantasy, So I think it does that, and it does it. It's always done it really well, but it's done it shit. Pardon my French, but now it just seems better than it being character flavor, because that's all it was prior to that. Like in the original 2014 book, you had a nice pet, you had a nice animal that followed you around, that a lot of the time you try and keep safe, or you'd have nice interactions with, and so with the group. That is all still there, but they've just made it more useful in every other circumstance.
It's nice. I like the idea of an urban ranger with a dog who is there, like helps them track and stuff. But obviously, in 2014, if you said my animal companion's a dog, the DM would be like, "Great, it has 6 HP and a +1 to hit."
Great, useless. And so that would not last long on the battlefield. At least with when you have familiars or companions that you can summon by a spell, you can always bring them back once your beast is dead. Yeah, unless you want to cast Revivify or something on it, which you could do. I assume you can still do that on
you can
on animal.
You can revive them. I think you beast.
Very expensive.
If a beast dies, you can obtain a new one by spending 8 hours magically bonding with a beast that isn't hostile to you and meets the requirements. You got to find a new one.
So basically, you replace it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you weren't particularly close to this animal. You'd had it for 8 hours. It's now your best friend.
We've done everything together. Yeah, fair play. That's Beastmaster. Again, not the best subclass by any means, but it has been marginally improved in areas. Fey Wanderer. Now, I know this is one that you like, Rick. what is Fey Wanderer going to be bringing to the Ranger subclass?
So Fey Wanderer essentially moves the subclass closer to Bard. So normally you're a bit close to Rogue. Now you're close to Bard. You can add 1d4 damage to the target at 3rd level. It's almost entirely unchanged from Tasha's, but instead of
psychic damage.
Yes. Add 1d4 psychic damage. Increases to 1d6 when you reach 11th level. So you're doing your Hunter's Mark and your Dreadful Strikes, but it can only take the extra damage once per turn. So kind of meh. They've changed Dispel Magic that you get at 9th for Summon Fey. So you've got a friend.
Nice.
And
because of the monster manual, they're expanding what is considered as Fey and what creatures you're able to summon. So that's nice. You get a bit more choice in that respect.
Now a template, isn't it? Using the Fey Spirit stat block, so you don't have to go digging through the monster manual. Use Summon Fey. It follows a template that's included in the spell, and you get choices of whether you want it to be Fuming, Mirthful, or Tricksy. Or you do now. I don't know if you will later.
That reminds me of Summon's Shadow Spawn, where you could say like it's Fury or it's Fear or
same family.
Nice.
A lot of the summons have turned into that recently. So Summon Elementals was the same. You just pick an element.
Yeah.
Fey was like that. Summon Woodland Beasts was a bit more DM discretionary. They didn't have that. Was it a flying? Was it a walking kind of thing? That was the only one I think that was a little more specific, but also not your choice.
Summon Beast came in and allowed you to pick air, earth, or sea.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then, so you could summon your beasts like that.
Yeah.
A much better way of using the spells, I think, where you just pick from a template and you don't have to go digging through, looking up the stats for giant scorpions and whatnot. But Fey Wanderers also get Otherworldly Glamour. When you make a charisma-based check, you can gain a bonus equal to your wisdom modifier, and you gain proficiency in deception, performance, or persuasion. Pretty good. You're a persuasive,
very
you're charming, very bardy. You get advantage against being charmed and frightened, and whenever a creature within 120 feet of you succeeds on a wisdom saving throw against being charmed or frightened, you can use your reaction to force a different creature you can see to make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. And then they are either charmed or frightened by you for 1 minute. Then they can repeat the save. That's at 7th level. So that's quite good if you've got a warlock in your party. Or if you're doing fairy stuff yourself.
Because if you're an elf, wouldn't you get advantage on being charmed?
Well, yeah, but then you can choose someone else. If they succeed, you can use your reaction to pick someone else, can't you?
Yeah, fair. That's not too bad. I like that. Dispel Magic was one of the spells that this subclass kind of had within its own spell list. Now that's been expanded to all rangers, and again, I think we spoke about Dispel Magic and its utility in our last episode within Wizards, and it's really, really quite nice that, albeit a half caster, this is a really good spell for the rangers to get.
Yep, good that it's on the list. I would take it as a ranger.
Yeah.
It's one of those, like, it used to always be prepared for Fey Wanderer, but it's now that Summon Fey. But it just means the rest of the Rangers can have it too. You don't have to be a Fey Wanderer to get that, which is fab. I don't think it takes much away. Sure, you've got to use one of your slots, like one of your available options for preparation. But I think Dispel Magic is going to be in there a lot of the time. Like, it is top tier. You're probably going to pick
a little more expensive for a Ranger to take than a Wizard because they don't get as many spell slots, but worth it if you're...
Is it 3rd level?
2nd level Dispel Magic.
Second level. Okay.
No, it's 3rd.
It is 3rd. You're right. We should have had a quiz. See, you're on fire.
I sometimes am. Sometimes.
Hey, I said it first.
You did. We'll quiz you next week, Mike.
That would be a great shout, and I think I would lose. But so that's Fey Wanderer. That has come from Tasha's with it not being an original class in the PHB. But we can go on to my favourite one now. And as much as I would love to talk about this, I think Martyn would probably do a better job.
Oh, why don't you?
No, you can. Yeah? You do Gloomstalker. Go on, treat yourself.
Yeah. If you like it that much, go on.
Oh, well, it's a subclass that I utilise as a multi-class option, really, because I think it fits so nicely with something like an Assassin Rogue. But anyway, Gloomstalker has had some tweaks, not massive amount, but it has that fantastic ability of Dread Ambusher. So if on the first turn of combat something hasn't taken an attack or an action, it gets to essentially do an extra attack with slightly buff damage on that. So it says instead of an extra attack on the first round deals additional damage, the Gloomstalker's Dread Ambusher now allows them to add extra damage to a hit a few times per day. So that's how it's changed slightly. The fact it can be used multiple times per day, is that better?
Pros and cons.
Yeah, is that
Pros
better
and cons.
than at the start of each combat? It depends how many combats you're having in a day, I guess, isn't it?
You can, depending on your level, you can end a combat almost before it starts as a Gloomstalker, especially if you're a Gloomstalker who's multi-classed with a rogue and it's getting some sneak stuff. And you got more chance of critting because you've got 3 attacks and one of them is guaranteed to do an additional D8. That said, it dropped off hard after your first round of combat. Because you didn't get that extra attack, you didn't get that extra damage. You probably, if you have multi-classed with rogue and you're in the second round, you're not getting your advantage from assassin being before them, people who haven't taken turns in initiative order yet, so it drops off hard. So it's nice that you've now got the ability to use this when it is most beneficial, rather than you've got to make use of it now right at the beginning.
But it is a big hit to the power
but
of
that
it.
that right at the beginning was it was really
arguably
strong.
It was too powerful anyway.
That's why
I think that is fair.
For internal balance of the Ranger, Beastmaster gets a doggo, Gloomstalker gets a whole extra more damaging attack that can end combats. Internal balance wise, it was a bit much.
So is it going to turn into a charge based thing, a little bit like superiority dice, where it just adds those extra damage? Yeah. I prefer it the old way because I like ending things before they start. But Dread Ambusher is still around. Stalker's Fury, which was at level 11, has also been changed a little bit as well, and it increases the damage of your Dread Ambusher and also gives you the ability to give it an additional effect when you use it. So here's one example. For instance, you can make an extra attack on a nearby enemy, and you can frighten them, which is pretty cool, which then will result in them running away from you. Yeah, that's Stalker's Fury, which is one of the...
I think this is much better than the original Stalker's Fury.
Yeah.
Stalker's wasn't necessarily bad, was probably one of the better ones. So it used to be Stalker's Fury that if you missed, you got another attack.
Yeah.
Basically, which was nice. But this one, if you think by this point you've got multiple attacks, they're now dealing more damage.
Yeah.
And you can add additional effects, of which you were already adding additional effects because of your weapon masteries. I think it synergizes really well with, more than anything, the weapon mastery changes.
If they're frightened of you, does that mean you get advantage on them and they get disadvantage against you?
No, they get disadvantage against you and can't move closer to you.
Against you?
Providing they can see you.
As long as the source of their fear is within sight or something. And is it disadvantage on
attack rolls and ability checks?
That's it, ability checks as well. Well, the source
and
of
if you're a Gloomstalker, you're likely to be kind of slinking around, going in and out of the shadows.
Loads of the features. There's a Ranger have been making you not visible to people.
So having that fear ability, that frighten ability, may not be the most useful. Those are the kind of the main changes for Gloomstalker from the original subclass. And I think we could look to finish off these subclasses with probably one of the most commonly used ones. It was in the original PHB and still a pretty powerful one to choose, and that is the Hunter. Martyn, Hunter, what's been tweaked, what's been changed? Is it still as good?
They've kind of trimmed the fat on this one a little bit. So they've made defensive tactics and Hunter's Prey give you 2 options instead of 3. But you can change those now on short or long rests.
Is that like Horde Breaker and those sorts of those sorts of things that you can choose from?
Yeah.
So Colossus Slayer, Giant Killer, Horde Breaker,
Colossus Slayer.
Yeah. And defensive tactics was escape the Horde, multi-attack defense, and steal will. So they each gave you 3 options. Now they're only going to give you 2 options,
Okay.
but you can change them out on short and long rests.
Which is pretty good. I think flexibility is nice. Being able to change your stuff out on a short rest. Change my tactics because I know we're fighting orcs who love attacking me multiple times. Cool. Why not?
It gives that ranger something to think about on that long rest.
Yeah. Weirdly, I think it takes away from what they've built through a lot of the other changes where you're able to make your character the way you want your character to be. Because previously with those options for Hunter's Prey, with those options for defensive tactics, they were almost defining features, right? Like, this is the thing that I do, where all of the other stuff that we've seen again has been allowing you to play the person that you've always envisioned. And I think it did that then. Whereas now, it just makes them, yeah, sure, absolutely a lot more adaptable. Is it probably going to end up being a bit more fun to play? Sure, but I think it contradicts the theory or the feel of some of the changes that they've made. I don't think it's a bad change, but I just think it seems like they've thought about it from a different angle.
Okay, fair.
Also, arguably, I would always take the same one anyway. You pick the best one, which is probably Colossus Slayer.
Yeah, the single target damage.
And then you would keep that forever, unless suddenly you're in a kobold nest, I suppose.
What about its changes to Hunter's Mark?
So, change to Hunter's Law.
Hunter's Law
is the big one. So, Hunter's Law at level 3 for this one, you now automatically know the immunities, resistance, and vulnerabilities of creatures that you have marked with Hunter's Mark.
Pretty good for a hunter. That kind of makes sense, really. That fact you can know the weaknesses and how to bring that creature down easier.
Yeah, I think it's fab. Mechanically, it's good. As a player, I think I'd enjoy it. Doesn't make sense to me.
No,
it's a bit meta, isn't it?
From an in-world perspective, how would you know? This is the first time I've spent my entire life living in a forest or something like that. How the heck am I ever going to have seen a yeti, for example, and know what when have I seen a troll? How do I all of a sudden know about its problems with fire and stuff like that? Like, sure, from an outside as a player, it's great. Doesn't make sense from a character
At
perspective.
least Smaug had a massive hole.
That's what I'm thinking. These rangers actually have JRPG eyes, and they see all monsters with giant glowing weak spots.
Yeah.
Okay. Got you.
And then a little guy pops up in the corner of their vision and goes, "Hit the weak spot for massive damage."
Yeah, very meta-y. I kind of agree with you there on that, Martin. So that's the hunter. That's a quick little brief look at the 4 subclasses that the ranger is graced with in this PHB. And you're probably going to have your favourites. I think I mentioned that Gloomstalker is probably my favourite. But just because of those class features rangers gets later on, I probably would take a few levels in Gloomstalker and then dip out into something else. This is not something that I'm probably going to pursue into high levels. I don't know.
Nah,
that's kind of my take on it.
Maybe level 6.
Yeah, and go rogue, and maybe a few. You being a half caster could probably dip into something else as well.
I'd get my multi attack and go.
I like the climb and swim speed, so I'd maybe stay for that. But then maybe I'd go I wouldn't go barbarian because Hunter's Mark's too much.
There's concentration, yeah.
Although, having said that, you could just not cast it. But maybe you'd probably go rogue.
How dare you not cast Hunter's Mark? It is now the identity of Rangers.
It doesn't do much more at level 6, does it? You can cast it free.
This is the thing that winds me up. Yeah. They've gone, we're going to make the Ranger be more Ranger by making it completely beholden to one spell.
I mean, with the Barb and its rage, that's kind of always what it was anyway. Like, you need... Yeah, I think, to quote you, Martin, without the Barb's rage, it's just a decent fighter. So, a mediocre fighting class. Yeah, so hopefully you guys at home enjoyed our little look through potential changes or the tweaks that are coming with the new PHB on Ranger. And let us know within the comments that you can now do on Spotify, or contact us on Discord. Join our Discord and chat to us on there what your thoughts are on the changes of this class. Just before we go, as we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, we will just spend a couple of minutes now just talking about how Rangers are perceived within the media. We mentioned characters such as Legolas. We mentioned actually before we started recording this podcast about, I think it was Aragon, wasn't it? Is Aragon and Legolas a Ranger? Which is which? Because I would say, although, yeah, he's called Strider and he is technically a Ranger in the books, I think Legolas is kind of a Ranger as well, is he not? Because he fires a bow and arrow. That kind of sounds rangery to me.
I think Legolas is a fighter because, except for using his elf eyes to see, which is a racial trait, he doesn't do anything else except for follow Aragorn around and shoot with a bow. Charisma's clearly his dump stat.
No, that's just Orlando Bloom. That's just his acting ability, I'm afraid. I heard an interesting thing about Orlando Bloom on Legolas. He only got $175,000 for that role, whereas like someone like Ian McKellen got millions.
He was relatively
kind of
at that point, though, wasn't he, Orlando Bloom? And it launched him into a series of terrible pirate films
and terrible rom-coms with Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah. So I think he did quite well out of it. He got like an extremely extended long holiday to New Zealand, some great friends and fame. So, and to be fair, $100,000 still not to be sniffed at.
Definitely not. Aragon, Ranger, yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah,
absolutely.
100%. He can track, and he can pick up a herb and know what to do with it.
In the Fellowship, he goes, "Do you know the Etherlas plant?" So he's clearly proficient or has expertise in nature.
Yeah, nature and survival. Yeah, for sure.
And you know what? He says, "I can avoid being seen if I wish, Mr. Baggins, but to turn invisible entirely, that is a neat trick." So clearly he's not 14th level or a Gloomstalker. But
no, obviously not. No. He's quite low level at the start of the Fellowship, but by flipping Return of the King, he is literally a king. So does he take a few levels in Fighter there, do you think, to kind of round himself off there, maybe?
Any sensible person wouldn't have got that far purely on Ranger, so yeah, probably.
He gets his extra attack and then he leaves.
Yeah, he's buggered off, yeah. And actually, his nickname Strider is just a synonym for Ranger anyway, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Any other Rangers within media that we can think of?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this quite heavily since we discussed the idea. So have you read or watched any of the Wheel of Time series? The Robert Jordan Wheel of Time.
It's on Amazon Prime, but I've seen a few episodes, yeah.
It's on Prime. The books are also fantastic.
Okay.
Recommend the books over the TV show.
Unless you have a lot of time and a lot of patience, I would not recommend the books.
Well, I have both of those things, or I have had at some point. So
don't we know?
Having read the books, I'd still recommend it. But Perrin Aybara from those books, bit Beastmastery almost. Like he's got the whole wolf thing going on with him, and he's good at tracking and stuff like that because he's got like these wolfish abilities. I feel he gives me Ranger vibes. While he is biggie, strong blacksmith person, I definitely get Ranger vibes from him.
What's There's another one of Rand's friends from his village who gets cursed with the coin, the lucky coin. Is that Perrin as well? Matt, yes. And he turns into a bit of a monkey guy, actually. He starts fighting with a stick.
Yeah.
Gets quite lucky. But that's not what we're talking about.
It's not. So I've got some other stuff. Daryl Dixon from The Walking Dead. He's a Ranger.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And that's not even fantasy based. That's obviously post-apocalyptic, but crossbow, tracker,
Geralt of Rivia, he's a Ranger.
Yeah, so he was on my list. Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn.
Geralt.
I literally just looked up Horizon Zero Dawn because I was like, she definitely is a Ranger.
Geralt as well, absolutely.
Geralt.
Both of those tracking Geralt with his potions and everything like that.
But
yeah, absolutely.
maybe like he's got some levels in something like Warlock or something. I'm not maybe not Warlock, but
Artificer.
Yeah.
Couple of levels in Artificer for his Alchemist.
Well, he can do something like Shield and
Rangers are half
Flaming
Estus.
Hands.
Yeah.
Do Rangers get a shield?
No.
I think Rangers get shield, don't they?
I don't think so. I don't think it's on their spell list.
But yeah, no, I see. I do see why Garrett could be a ranger, but he definitely has got some magical talents that a ranger may not have. So definitely a multi-class there.
I also think Link, possibly. Now this one's pushing it a little bit, but Link maybe, because he can sword and board, he can bow and arrow, he goes around picking plants all the time. Mm-hmm. He's a fairy type, so they're generally on good terms with animals, I think. I don't know. Likes the forest because he's a forest person. So while he has got a little bit more to him than that, again, probably got a few levels in fighter, really, if we're looking at it. But I was umming and ahhing about that one. Yeah. I was a little on the fence.
There's one ranger it's quite recently come out in a video game that I wholeheartedly disagree is a ranger. Albeit he has got a small little pet, and that's Minsk in Baldur's Gate 3. He doesn't.
Minsk's not new.
He's not new at all, and technically
he was never a ranger.
Minsk and Boo, they're not new.
He was a ranger barbarian.
I would say he's massively more barbarian than he's a ranger. I don't think of him as a.
You think of him like that just because he's an idiot, and you expect rangers to be a bit smarter.
There is that.
I suppose iconically though, he's usually got long or great sword, armor on, probably not scales. He'll be wearing usually medium armor. I'd expect Minskin, but then he's got Boo, and he's starting to have his animal companion kind of deal with Boo. He's got some little spellcasting attributes. Definitely ranger, 100%.
Okay. Well, we probably could talk about this extensively more, but I am looking at our recording time, and Mike in the edit is going to love this, so I will just pause our chat there, and hopefully you're enjoying our series on our looks at the changes in classes, and we will probably look to do a few more potentially on the ones that have got the most changing in them. So stay tuned for that in future weeks. We are also going to be doing some more video game ones in future weeks as well. So again, stay tuned for that as well. And it's been fantastic having both Rick and Martyn. Be sure to follow us on all the different podcast platforms that you listen on. YouTube, we're going to be uploading a lot more stuff going forward. Okay, well, again, it's been wonderful having you both, and I look forward to having you with us on an episode real soon. From me, Mike, that's our weekly podcast on Chat TPK. Join us next week for more geeky conversations. Peace and love, and a healthy, happy week, I hope, is coming your way. See you later, gents.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.